Your lips touch someone else's. For about 10 seconds, give or take, your brain floods with oxytocin, your heart rate shifts, and you exchange roughly 80 million bacteria in a single kiss. You've probably done this without ever once asking where it came from. And here's the thing nobody tells you. It's not universal. It's not even close to universal. Less than half the cultures ever studied on Earth do this at all. Let that sink in for a second. So this isn't really a video about romance. It's a video about a strange, fragile, historically inconsistent behavior that somehow became one of the most emotionally loaded gestures a human being can make. And the deeper you dig, the weirder the story gets. Let's start with the mechanism, because kissing didn't just appear out of nowhere. One leading theory traces the origin of mouth-to-mouth contact back to something considerably less romantic than you'd expect: weaning. In many ancient and traditional societies, mothers softened solid food for infants through a process known as premastication, where they would chew it themselves first and then pass it directly from their mouth to their infants. We already know this behavior is genuinely ancient. Chimpanzees do it too. A baby's very first experience of close mouth contact with another person may have been entirely nutritional, not affectionate, which means the kiss you associate with love might have originated as a means of delivering mashed-up food. There's a second theory running alongside it, and this one is biological rather than practical. A kiss involves close facial contact, shared breath, and an exchange of saliva. Justin Garcia, a research scientist at the Kinsey Institute, has pointed out that this exchange likely carries real evolutionary information: pheromones, immune system signals, and even subtle cues about genetic compatibility. Under this theory, kissing isn't primarily emotional at all. It's your body running a chemical background check on someone, using the most direct sampling method available. Neither theory fully explains it alone. Both together start to look like the real answer. Now here's where it gets genuinely strange. Researchers studying the genetics of an oral microbe called Methanobrevibacter oralis have found that this exact organism exists in both Neanderthals and modern humans, and it appears to have been passed directly between the two populations. That kind of transmission generally requires close, repeated, saliva-level contact, which means something like a kiss, or at least the physical mechanism behind one, may have been happening well over 100,000 years ago, between two entirely different human species. Long before writing, long before agriculture, long before anything we'd call civilization. So the physical act is almost certainly ancient. The written record, though, is a completely different story. For decades, the oldest documented evidence of kissing came from a Bronze Age manuscript out of South Asia, tentatively dated to around 1500 BCE. Then, in 2023, two researchers, Troels Pank Arbol and Sophie Lund Rasmussen at the University of Copenhagen, published a study in the journal Science that pushed that timeline back by another 1,000 years. They'd been combing through overlooked cuneiform tablets from ancient Mesopotamia, and they found kissing described plainly, in Sumerian first, then in Akkadian, dating to at least 2500 BCE, roughly 4,500 years ago. One surviving tablet, translated from a location called Sippar, reads with a startling amount of feeling for something carved into clay. My upper lip becomes moist, while my lower lip trembles. I shall embrace him. I shall kiss him. Someone wrote that down 4,000 years ago, and it still reads like a modern text message you'd regret sending. But here's the detail most retellings of this discovery skip entirely. The Mesopotamians didn't just have one kind of kiss. They had several, and they were careful to distinguish between them in writing. There was a parental kiss, between a parent and a child. There was a friendly kiss exchanged between people who simply liked each other. There was a formal submissive kiss, where you literally kissed the feet of a ruler. And separately, there was the romantic sexual kiss, tied specifically to desire and to marriage. These weren't treated as the same gesture in different contexts. They were understood as genuinely different acts. And in Mesopotamia specifically, the romantic version came with real social weight attached. Surviving texts describe a married woman who was almost led astray by an unmarried man's kiss, and a separate unmarried woman formally swearing that she had avoided both kissing and sex with a specific man. This wasn't casual. A kiss in the wrong context could threaten a marriage, a reputation, an entire social standing. Here's the part of this story that nobody expects. Kissing had a genuine, documented medical downside, and the ancient world eventually noticed. Mesopotamian medical texts describe a mouth condition called bushanu, causing painful eruptions around the lips, a description that lines up disturbingly well with modern herpes simplex virus. Separate research sequencing the genome of the dominant modern strain of oral herpes, HSV1, traced its rapid spread specifically to the Bronze Age, timed almost exactly with large-scale human migrations moving across Eurasia into Europe. As populations grew denser and people came into contact with more strangers, the virus that kissing carries got a much bigger highway to travel on. By the time you reached the Roman Empire, someone had actually noticed the pattern and tried to do something about it. The Emperor Tiberius reportedly attempted to ban kissing at official state functions, very likely because he suspected it was spreading exactly this kind of infection through the imperial court. It did not work. Nobody stopped kissing because an emperor asked nicely. Now for the honest, uncomfortable pause, because this is where the popular version of this story completely falls apart. You'd assume, given everything so far, that kissing is simply hardwired into every human culture that has ever existed. It is not. In 2015, anthropologist William Jankowiak, along with Shelley Volschi and Justin Garcia, published a study in the journal American Anthropologist that surveyed 168 distinct cultures from around the world, searching specifically for evidence of the romantic sexual kiss. They expected to confirm what most people assume, that kissing is a near-universal human behavior. They found the opposite. Romantic kissing showed up in only 46% of the cultures studied, fewer than half. In the remaining cultures, ethnographers found either no evidence of it at all, or direct evidence that people found the entire concept unpleasant. The Thonga people of southeastern Africa reportedly reacted with genuine disgust the first time they saw Europeans kissing. The Mehinaku, a horticultural society in the Amazon, engages in a fair amount of physical affection with each other, including biting each other's eyebrows, yet kissing simply isn't part of their repertoire. The Trobriand Islanders of Melanesia are on record describing the whole practice as a rather silly form of amusement. None of these are small, obscure fringe case. Together, they represent a genuinely enormous share of documented human cultures. What did turn out to be close to universal, according to the same research, is the parental kiss. Adults kissing infants and small children showed up almost everywhere the researchers looked. It's the romantic version specifically that turns out to be optional, culturally learned rather than instinctively wired into every human population on Earth. Jankowiak's team also found something else worth sitting with. Romantic kissing correlated strongly with social complexity, meaning it showed up far more often in societies with clear class structures, where people regularly interacted with strangers outside their immediate family group, and far less often among small, close-knit foraging societies where nearly everyone already knew everyone else intimately. One interpretation researchers have offered is that kissing may function partly as a fast, intimate way to gather biological information about someone you don't already know everything about. In a small band where you've known every single person your entire life, that function may simply be less necessary. So put this together, and the real picture looks considerably stranger than the simple version most people carry around. The physical act, mouth-to-mouth contact, appears to be extraordinarily old, plausibly stretching back over 100,000 years, based on shared oral microbes between our species and Neanderthals. The specific romantic meaning we now attach to it is a completely different, much more recent, and much more culturally optional layer stacked on top. The written record confirms humans were kissing, and writing carefully about kissing, at least 4,500 years ago in Mesopotamia, distinguishing multiple types with real social consequences attached to getting it wrong. And for a huge share of human cultures throughout history, right up to today, this entire behavior simply never caught on the way it did for us. That's the strange part worth carrying with you. The thing that feels like the most natural, universal human gesture imaginable turns out to be something considerably closer to a coin flip, deeply meaningful in some cultures, mildly baffling in others, and older and stranger underneath it all than almost anyone assumes. So the next time your lips touch someone else's, you're not performing some ancient universal ritual every human who ever lived has shared. You're doing something considerably rarer than that. Something that started, possibly, as a mother softening food for her child. Something a Mesopotamian scribe once found important enough to carve into permanent clay. Something an emperor once tried and failed to outlaw. And something that, right now, less than half the cultures that have ever existed would have found even remotely appealing. You're not just kissing someone, you're participating in one of the strangest, least consistent habits your species ever developed, and somehow, it still means something.